You need to put a couple orange cones in this thing.
I know, right?
So you can just fucking set them out.
That fucking word legend and hero and like all these things, like that's what he is. To me, Anthony is a fucking hero. Anthony is he's not just a skateboard legend, he's like a legend in just being a fucking human being.
Wow.
He's helped me tremendously. Like, gave me advice, like would tell me when I'm blowing it.
Yeah, he definitely has that leader quality. I look at him like a blue-collar skater. Like, he's just like crazy hardworking.
He's been fucking so good for so long. Anthony has, like, and he's so focused and so driven on his skateboarding and on like documenting his skateboarding. It's rad to see that passion.
Anthony's someone that's skating into his 40s, and there's only like a few people that are skating at a professional level deep into their 40s or mid-40s.
I mean, what, Propeller was almost 10 years ago now. She's still so good, and whenever he puts out footage, it's undeniably Anthony. It's, like I said, fast and powerful, but still doing like really tech tricks.
It was never that uncommon for trouble to exist when you put a group of skaters together somewhere. I couldn't tell you how many skaters I bailed out of jail, destroyed hotel rooms I paid for.
Cats have 9 lives. He might have fucking 11, because it's insane, some of these stories I hear, whatever, him using drugs and partying and not sleeping for 3 days and going to film tricks after, you know, you're just like, from the stories I've heard, you were half dead.
The story's kind of long, like the entire thing, but you want to hear the story? Okay. This guy.
Do you remember so in the Dylan episode, we went to that park, dirt park, before people went there, and it was just me and Dylan, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'll skate too. Like, I like trying to show that I skate, and I did a backside disaster, hung up, and ate so much shit, like where it felt like I cracked a rib, and was so embarrassed, like.
You just grind through it anyways?
Just like
pretend.
I'm trying to show that, hey, look, I skate, and then I just slam so fucking hard, and then I'm filming the rest of it like.
You probably needed to go to the hospital.
So now, here I am again. What's up? Welcome back to Epically Later. I'm nervous about this episode.
There you go.
It's with Anthony Van Engelen, who is such a legend, and frankly, to me, a little intimidating. Wouldn't say we're friends, but I've been around him and stuff, and I never get used to seeing him. He just scares me a little bit, and but in a fun, exciting way. His parts are fun and exciting to watch. We are down here at the FA warehouse. This is actually the AF bench. You're gonna see a lot of tricks done on this thing in here. We're not sure if he's comfortable talking about his times away from skating. You know, he had substance abuse issues. There was a point where he was a little unhinged. And so we're gonna ask him about it, see how comfortable he is talking about some of those topics. He's pretty private. We had to twist his arm to get him to do this. It wasn't an easy yes for the episode. It's just, it's an honor to have him on the show, because having him on it, I don't know, it's just, it makes Epically Later better to have somebody like Anthony come talk to us. Anyway, I'm really excited. Anthony Van Engelen episode, welcome back. Hope you enjoy it.
Obviously, when you grow up in Southern California, like, you can't not be exposed to skateboarding, especially if you're growing up in San Diego, Orange County area. Like, it's just fucking, there's a skateboard in every garage, you know? Like, even my mom, she'll be like, oh, I used to be able to do 360s, you know? Like, it was just around, you know? I was born in San Diego, but I would say that most of my growing up was in Orange County.
Good enough just to get like your first flowboard or shop sponsors or anything like that?
I don't know how old I was. Maybe 14, 13, I don't fucking know. There was this guy, his name was Ian Gant. He rode for Channel 1. I was skating with him a bit, and he helped me get on Channel 1. Yeah, like Chris San and fucking Chet Thomas rode for it, Jamie Hart. But I was a little dick. All I wanted was like World Industry Boards, you know? By the time I was like 15, 16, I kind of started getting into partying and stuff and wasn't skating as much. Yeah, like 16 to 18 was a weird time for me, so. But this is a whole different time, you know what I mean? Like you could disappear for 6 months and no one's really like, where you at, you know what I mean? Like it's just, I had a group of friends who lived kind of down on Lido Island. None of them skated, they all surf, and they were fucking maniacs. The house was a anything goes type house. You know, dad's selling drugs, mom's on drugs, and the whole neighborhood stays at that house and does whatever they want. Fucking mom, grocery stores across the street, she would fill that thing up with fucking booze, beer, the whole thing, and bring it back and just whatever. So that's what I was doing. Skating a little bit in between, you know what I mean? But, you know, I was kind of going on that path. This is where the story gets even funnier. So my stepfather had moved to Russia, and he's not Russian. He's from Buena Park. It's like he was going to open a restaurant, a Mexican restaurant. He's Mexican, so it was going to be the first one, right? I don't know if it's the first one in Russia, but definitely going to be the first one in St. Petersburg, you know. And he would call, check in on me, and he'd call my mom first. Oh, he's, you know, not going to school and not working. I got 3 years into high school. Like kind of the start of my third year started getting shaky, and then I was done. He's like, you either gotta go to school, get a job, or you can come over here. Thought about it, and I was like, oh, fuck it, I'll go over there. It'll be a little adventure. It was insane. I was like, as soon as I got there, I was like, oh my God, this is a mistake. And that was right when communism was kind of collapsing. I think it was like 94, 5. I was there for, maybe 4 months. And when I came home, I was like, I ain't fucking going back there. I was grateful that I went there and it had switched some gears in my head, because for a kid coming from Southern California, partying and skateboarding and whatever the fuck I was doing, it was like, it was a wake-up call, like, oh, life's a lot different, you know, outside of my reality. Like right away, I started skating, and I kind of reconnected with some of my skate friends, but I changed in that short amount of time, and I started skating, and I kind of re-fell in love with it like I had never been in love with skating. I was skating Huntington Park a lot, and I ran into Dill.
He was so nervous to do this, by the way. Like, he's not like me, where I'm just like Anthony's like, Urgh. So I met Anthony. I was probably about 18 or something like that. He's 2 years younger. And I believe he nollie crooked grinded a handrail, and I just thought, wow.
When I ran into him, he had just left 101 and was doing 23. You know, I looked up to him. He was like one of those guys, you know, he rode for 101 and fucking, he's in Trilogy. Like, it's just like, all right, sick. And then he's like, do you have footage? And I was like, yeah. I gave him whatever I had on tape.
He was good, man. He was good. And I think this is funny, and it's true. So my mom said to me one time, my mom said, Jason, you skateboard, like you glide. You're so, you know, smooth. Like you're like, I don't know, you're like Baryshnikov. It's like ballet. Anthony skates, it's like he's mad. He's got to break the things. He's smooth. He's real smooth, but he's smashing the things. I thought that was the funniest way of describing Anthony skating by my mother. But it is true. And then I brought Anthony into 23, and that was short-lived. But Anthony had that 4-on-1 Wheels of Fortune where he's doing the nose grind up the bench over the fence. That was really gnarly.
My first memory of Ave was through Atiba. remember we were both living in San Diego, and he was going up to LA for the day, and I was like, who are you gonna shoot? And he's like, Ave. And I was like, Ave? Like, what's an Ave? He's like, no, that's a person, Anthony Van Engelen, Ave. And I was like, oh, sick name. Ave was like Dill's sidekick, and he fucking ripped.
Dill was the star, right? So it's hard to imagine Anthony Van Engelen as the amateur second banana, but for a brief window, that's what he was.
I started filming for that video Feedback, and Dill and Ave had a part in that. Dill was so eccentric, and you walk into his room and there's just like shit everywhere, whatever, and then you just see like Ave shaking his head, looking around.
Once we started skating together, I just found out there's so many things like, yeah, like you just click, you know, like it's like a bond. Like I've had that with a couple friends, you know, like you just be thinking the same thing at the same time, like just hanging out with somebody a lot and just, you know, like skating, all that shit.
I think it's like opposites attract kind of thing. Like one is super outgoing and one is introverted. It makes sense. And they're both Scorpios that are born like the same, like fucking, they're one day apart.
Anthony was kind of quiet but funny, and Dill was wild, you know, Dill. So they would crack each other up all day long, you know. And part of Dill's deal was wherever I go, Anthony's coming with me. And Anthony was on another level with the pop thing, kind of the way Dill was.
He switched frontside crooked grind to this gigantic concrete table at his old high school in Laguna. People weren't doing switch front crooks on big ass stuff like that.
But I remember he nollied straight over a table. Just back then, you know, back then people would ship the nollie, but just like whoosh, and I was like, whoa.
He was skating around LA schoolyards when we were like filming the Chocolate Tour video, and like we knew he was like gonna be super good. He's super powerful. Like when everybody's grinding like 3 feet, he's grinding like 12 feet or whatever. And he probably could have gone on girl, like no problem, I'm sure.
And so we were living together in an apartment in Hollywood, and then we got on Alien Workshop.
I didn't know a ton about Alien Workshop. I remember Memory Scream, and I watched that when that came out. I didn't understand that when I saw it. I was like, this is fucking weird. Like, I just want to see the skating. Like, it's so hard to get through all this stuff. And now I love that video. You watch it, it's just like, fuck, this is such a rad video, you know?
Jason was being recruited to ride for Workshop by, I believe, Kalis and Deerdeck. Rob was kind of the conduit to everything. He was living in San Diego. So Ave came through Dill. I think it was an Alien Industry part in 411. And I liked that a lot because it was kind of his breakout part for us.
By the time we got on, it was like Kalis, Freddie, Deerdick. And Kalis was just fucking like, that was, you know, Kalis was just going for it, you know, it was sick. Felt like, instead of maybe some of the obvious things that maybe I even think maybe I would have wanted at that time, like hop on what's left of the world companies or, you know, whatever else is out there, you know. I was stoked. I was like, this is cool. This is kind of like different. It felt rad.
I met Ave during Photosynthesis. The first trip was like going down to Miami, and it was like the first trip where I was like on a trip with a bunch of people that I had been seeing in magazines. Those guys were just young and wild and crazy, man. Especially Freddie and Ave. There was a specific time on that trip where I wouldn't even go out like some of the nights, and I would just go to bed, but I was sharing a room with Freddie. So they would, dude, there was one night where they just like blasted it into the room, and I was like sheet over my head. They had stayed up all night on acid and walked the beach, but they came back and like Freddie came in, and I was like under the sheet. I like looked out, and like they were like, go to fucking sleep, whatever. They were just like crazy, and like shot a bottle at my head, and then like the bottle was in the wall, like the glass was like stuck in the wall, like broke. They were just like on some like we don't give a fuck, we're crazy kind of shit. I don't know.
Anthony was terrible at drinking. Terrible. I still have a chipped bone that I'm feeling right now in this elbow because he tackled me on Sunset Boulevard.
I mean, at that time, he could handle it and go skate. Ave got a couple good things on that trip. He like switched front crook this ledge off the stairs that was, dude, definitely super gnarly. I think he half cab crooked the cathedral rail maybe backside nose grinded it. He got some shit.
I remember never being fully satisfied with that part for myself. I remember being a little burnt out in the middle of that, and so I was never really happy with that final product, like for myself. I thought the video was incredible. Like, it was rad. Fucking Brian Winning and like Papalardo, just that whole emergence of that era, and like it was such a big time for the workshop too.
Oh, another thing, you should probably mark this and definitely use this. So I understand people find Anthony very intimidating. Just what's the beginning of his DC video part?
I thought it was funny when it came out. I definitely stressed a lot more when I was younger.
Whatever, that stress montage is like, it's funny, you know, but it's also very true to who Anthony is.
It's always like a meltdown to where you don't want to be the first one to go up and talk to him after he's been throwing the board like that, because you just don't know how he's going to engage with you.
I mean, it's entertaining. It's entertaining to watch. Sometimes it's like 2 or 3 tries in, and then you just see that board flying through the air, and you're like, oh shit. But apparently he said he's trying to be more mellow this year as his New Year's resolution, so we'll see how that works.
I think he pushed himself really hard, expects a lot out of himself, and the pressure was pretty high because he's getting paid a lot by shoe sponsors. And in skateboarding, you're only as good as your last video part. So the next video part has to be better than the last video part. So that's a lot of pressure.
Being around such, you know, accomplished skaters and all of this stuff, and trying a trick and being bothered that I should have fucking already done this, you know, I'm 30 minutes into this and freaking out, right? Just too much ego, I think. Like, in my later years, I got a little bit more patient. But I'll still I mean, I was skating the other day. It was like day 3, and you know, I fucking stressed the fuck out. And I'm 45 years old. It's insane. You know, like.
Skateboarding is like one of the most frustrating things on earth. You're like doing something over and over again, and it's like insanity because you're doing the same thing, and you're basically losing your mind.
You know, when they're skating, they're so intimidating and so pissed and throwing their board and like wouldn't even go near them, and then you kind of let them like decompress a little bit, and then they're just like cracking jokes and like right back to normal. Almost like, you fucking psycho, you were just like, you just threw your board at your truck 5 minutes ago, and now you're like, you know, cracking jokes.
Definitely had a bad temper, but not in like a scary way. Just visually scary, I'd say. If you didn't know him and you saw him, you'd be like, that's a fucking intense looking dude.
Yeah, he's definitely, it's scary when Abe freaks out because you're like, holy shit, he could probably just murder anybody. Like, he's got, you know, he's got that like intensity when he, you know, it shows when he skates, you know, that's why he looks so awesome on a skateboard. Abe's got some good freakouts. It's like I'll see him freak out sometimes, and like I kind of, you know, like I'm like grinning, or like kind of want to, you know, I'm just like so surprised at like what's going on. I almost want to laugh or like, you know, fucking whatever. But I just, you know, I like look away because I wouldn't want him like to see me like when he's freaking out. Because I mean, I guess, you know, when anybody freaks out, you don't want to look over and see somebody like kind of giving a chuckle to themselves. But you kind of just want to give them their space. I mean, he's awesome to skate with, man. Still like, fuck, he's been doing it for so long. I'm still psyched to fucking skate, you know what I mean? Like, we're getting this park and stuff, like he's fully like, still skate mode, you know?
DC was the first video that was sort of a video I was doing by myself. At the time, DC was like this huge brand, had crazy marketing. My experience with working with Anthony and just spending so much time with him during DC, in many ways it feels like a very different person, you know? He was a little bit less systematic than he was later, you know? And I think he was also just sort of at the mercy of his own kind of just younger self, you know?
I remember at the start of the DC video, it was right after photo, I was burnt out, which would make my temper come quick, you know, because I just didn't even want to be there doing it anyways. Yeah, and I was partying through all that. DC video, like, yeah, that's when I think for me, like, even that stuff started really kind of getting out of hand during that video.
I don't know, I think a lot of people were partying back then, you know? And I think Anthony wasn't much different because I lived with him, I had a room in his place. There's definitely, towards the end, there were some nights where he'd come home and it'd be a little bit scary, you know? He'd drink, but when he'd drink, he'd really drink, or whatever he was doing, and if I'd see him, it's like, in his eyes, just a different dude. And you know, he's a pretty intense dude, so when he's looking at you with those eyes, it's also like, he'd be looking at me like, almost like he didn't know me. I don't know how to explain it, I didn't like it. And that's, I think, like, the beginning of when I kind of started to realize that maybe, you know, when he was partying, it was a little bit more serious than some other people.
Then there was a point where I hit some sort of stride in that video and I got re-sparked. Even though I still had this partying and all this stuff going on, and I was actually very happy with that part. Looking back, I probably could have done better if I didn't have all the fucking partying shit going on that was going on, but I was pretty happy with it and did a lot of things that I wanted to do.
First person to do switch manual, switch 360 flip, which is such a good clip at Love Park. I remember being on the phone with him and he told me, holy shit, you got it.
One of the first skate parts that made an impression on me was this DC video part. Obviously over time, I rewatch it and be like, wow, like these tricks are so fucking cool and done in such a aggressive way that you really don't see that even now, like people skating like just with that intensity. What did he skate to? Like Ted Nugent? I mean, that whole video, that's still like the greatest skate video, one of them.
Yeah, that was a big thing to be a part of. And like you'd said, like, you know, people finish things and then there's like a celebration period. And, you know, that lasted for like 4 years for me.
As he got into the stories of the Barcelona trip, you gotta talk to him about that.
I think it was in Spain and Pablo had an apartment or something.
Pablo was young and he's on the workshop, he might have just gone pro.
So I had the apartment in Spain where I was just trying to skate and find stuff, and it was like the best. It was awesome.
And I went to Spain. I was like, I'm gonna get my shit together. I was fucked up and went there, and that was bad.
I remember like setting up a room for him. Like I was all psyched. Like I remember looking for spots for him. And I remember the first thing he gets into, when he walks into the apartment, he didn't even bring a board.
Anthony would come home from his late night escapades in Barcelona, and Pablo would be like lying in bed in his room reading a Bukowski.
And I was just kind of coming and going in this apartment that was his. Like, I'm such a fucking asshole.
Maybe the third day I saw him come out. He had like a leather jacket on, nothing underneath, like a rock star, and just going to get dinner.
I felt the judgment through his eyes.
I was trying to talk to him, being like, do you want to maybe skate this trip or something? And like, I had these books around, like these Bukowski books or something.
And I'm walking out the door and he's got his book and his wine and shit. I'm like, you read about it, I live it. And I fucking left.
It was true. It was true.
We joked about it like years later, how much that whole trip cost with like the drugs, the booze, the women, and the flights. And I think it was like a $20-something trip. Yeah, he didn't step on a board once. I was just kind of a bummer. I was looking forward to skating with him, but I should have known better. Like I should have realized.
Post-DC video is when I first kind of got worried about him, like really worried about him.
You know, I went from, you know, kind of being the guy who just drink some beers and stuff like that to like, okay, that's the start, and then it's, booze the rest of the night until whatever, and then, you know, all the other stuff that comes along with that too.
And I think he tried to get sober a couple times. You know, he'd gained weight, and you could tell he was really trying.
I think I was on like a probationary contract and whatnot. Like, hey, if you don't fucking get your shit together, like, this is it.
It was a dark time for him, and I couldn't smoke crack with Anthony the way I could smoke crack with other friends. It wasn't fun, is what I'm saying, when I did it with Anthony. It was not fun. he just got too gnarly. He just got, he turned into Incredible Hulk.
He told us about a trip where it was you and him sharing a hotel room.
Yeah, that was Boston. I remember that well, because that was post-DC video. He just kind of fell off the radar, and then I'd see him, and I knew he wasn't well. Like, I knew he had a serious problem.
But I had already been through a rehab. And, you know, it's dinner time, and I order a beer, and he's kind of like, really? All right. We got back to the hotel. I was like, I'll be back. And I ran down the street, found what I needed, smoked my shit, and buried it in the trash can, and then was like, okay, I'm gonna go out for a little bit. And then I was gone the whole fucking night. Just, I don't know what the fuck.
And I found like a can that he'd been smoking from in the bathroom. And I confronted him about it.
He was like, hey man, like, I care about you. Like, I have to say something basically to not enable me to fucking kill myself, you know, which is eventually where that was gonna take anybody.
His reaction, you know, was like, basically I could just tell how scared he was.
I remember I like fucking broke down in tears. I was like, you know, super upset. And I think I promised like, hey, I'm gonna get my shit together, blah, blah, blah. But that didn't happen. Maybe I got a little bit better at hiding things.
That was 2005. And he got sober and really got his shit together very soon after that, because right after that, we started working on Minefield.
By the time I had started Minefield, I had also gotten on Vans. Just a little bit before Minefield. I hadn't been skating much at all. But then I slowly started to go and skate this park in Santa Ana.
I rolled into the park. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw that like a figure of a guy smoking a cigarette, kind of did a double take, and I was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, that's Anthony Van Engelen. And I remember that's another thing, like he was wearing Vans.
And even throughout the DC video, anytime I get done skating, I'm putting arrows on. And I remember even like Danny Way was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? I was such a fucking dick, but kind of sick of the big puffy DC shoe thing and wanting to skate in that slim down shoe again.
So I went to Vans being like, you guys aren't gonna believe this. I saw Anthony Van Engelen wearing Vans at the skate park. And they're like, really?
I saw what Jeff did at Vans and shit, and I was like, oh, that's so sick. It looks so rad and right, you know? Like, so it was kind of weird. It's almost like I put it out into the fucking, whatever you want to call it. People say the universe. I hate that word, but yeah, when I got on Vans and then going to Minefield, like, it was enough of a spark to start skating again and to feel that passion for it and start to kind of seek out sobriety.
And that was 3.5 years, you know, it was we filmed for a long time. He was the person who I worked with probably the most, you know.
Up until that point, that was the hardest I had ever worked on something. I was happy with that part. I pushed myself and kind of skating just bigger stuff than I was accustomed to skating.
That part just stood out to me so much. Like, I'd seen DC and all that, but Minefield was like when I probably was at the age of like appreciating skateboarding more, and like his power and like smoothness. Like, I don't know how he's able to translate those together.
He skated really fast. Did simple tricks, but going fast, and he would, you know, slide his tail slides like, you know, as far as you can and just fucking go the distance, you know, so it's sick.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely kept me in shape. I remember there's a line in Minefield where it's behind this Ralph's. He like slappies a curb and does a backside 180. I remember trying that with him, and like I couldn't keep up with him. So I went and got like bigger, soft orange wheels. I got Swiss bearings, and then we went back there, and it was like I could actually like just keep up with him with like, and I was in good shape at the time.
Has he said how long he's been sober? Has he been sober 15 years? God, it feels like longer than that. He needed to. It was too much. It was just too much.
I got sober. Well, I got sober kind of towards the end of it, I think. I was 30. I was getting these blocks of time that were just, I wasn't partying, you know what I mean? And then I would go crazy. There was trips where like I was loaded, the trip was the next day, and I was just fucking stayed loaded because I didn't want to come down. Like, so I'm out filming, you know, on speed.
I think it's where he did the half cab crooked grind down the rail. And he told me later that he was like, I think doing speed or something. You know, that's like pretty big rail for a half cab crooked grind. And I remember him being like, fucking, are you fucking ready? Like he was really like in the zone. So, but I didn't know that at the time.
I officially kind of got sober at the end of Minefield. Enough things weren't working. My life I just didn't know how to fucking manage shit, you know? And I kind of had a moment of clarity, which wasn't the one that most people would think, oh, it must have came after this crazy fucking experience. It wasn't. It was just a realization, like, fuck, man. Like, I need some fucking help. Like, I'm not capable of fucking running this show with or without alcohol and drugs. So, and then I just committed myself to, you know, sobriety and seeing what that's about for real. You know, anytime I got to anything that was uncomfortable in that process before, I stopped. And I was ready to be uncomfortable to see if something else would work other than what I could come up with.
I lived in a house with Greg, like an alien workshop house, like to help get everyone around doing the video or whatnot. And so we would always go on these trips in this van. And I think my earliest memories of meeting Anthony are in that van, and he was slimmed down and he's like on it and focused and like determined to make the best part that he can for that video.
He was maybe kind of getting in shape again. And one thing about Anthony too is he's an athlete. He's always been an athlete.
Just I had that kind of a moment of clarity. It's like kind of like, okay, let's do this again, you know. And then I, you know, started kind of trying to go to meetings and stuff like that. And I remember for like 3 months straight, every night I'd just stare at the clock. It was like, okay, once that thing strikes midnight, you're not allowed to leave the house. If you're gonna go do what you want to do, you gotta leave right now. Once it's midnight, you have to go to sleep. And I'd just stare at the clock, and it would go midnight. I'm like, all right, let's turn the lights off. It was like some little game I had that it was like, you can go do that up until this point, but then you have to go to sleep, and it starts over tomorrow, right? That's how powerful the urge was.
I heard that you guys had a cowboy hat. Can you tell the story, what it was?
Yeah, so the hat was born on a alien workshop filming trip for Minefield.
There was this idea of a cowboy hat. Whoever gets a trick gets to wear this hat. And Carter is like notoriously cheap. And I remember trying to explain why it was worthwhile for us to buy this $300 cowboy hat. So I was like, it'll be motivational and it'll be fun and it can be a part of the video. And Carter's like, okay, fine, fuck it, get the hat.
This thing's pretty nice, dude.
So that's it.
Just the hat.
Do you like that one, Dylan?
Should we get this thing shaped a little better?
I have it, it's somewhere, it's in there. See, look, all guts, no glory.
If you got a trick, you could take the paint pen and mark. And then the Purple Heart was for someone who broke a bone, and I broke this wrist during Minefield, but I don't know if that was for me or for when Greg broke his hand filming.
People got really upset with us a couple times. Like in the 7-Eleven, like someone would be wearing it, they'd walk in, people would be like, the fuck are you doing with that on your hat? Like, you know, how disrespectful that is, which it is, you know? You can't say anything to it.
Oh boy, that again?
I wanted to ask you about it.
Fucking sick. Okay. I don't remember how far into the video it was that we got the hat and we started checking tricks off. And if you got a trick, you got to put the mark on it, and then you got to sit shotgun and pick the restaurant. We got 90 tricks on here. We all cared about the hat because you get to that place of crazy in a video, and when this thing kind of came into play, where it's like, oh, you're on a month-long trip, like, and you're in a van every single day, and the extra, like,
wearing the cowboy hat in shotgun, choosing the music. Like, those are big things when you are chained to a van for years.
I might have got 2 or 3 marks on the hat. I don't remember. I was being such a just pile. I was so bad at that time. Getting kind of late to the scene on Minefield, and I think my part shows it. That's my least. That's one of my more lackluster parts, but not because of Greg or anything. It's because of my laziness and my lifestyle choice at the time.
Dill was struggling through Minefield with all his demons and things that were going on in his life, and I love his video part in there, but I was around him on trips and stuff, and he was going through a lot. So once that video ended, and I was smoked after that thing, like I was tired, but I was sober and, you know, just enjoying not working on a 4-year project at the moment, you know, like.
I probably hadn't skated in like a year, and I was only like 32 years old, and I was living in New York, and I just picked up the phone and I called Anthony. I said, dude, you can say no to this if you want, but I need to skate again. I don't want to jam you up, but can I come stay with you? Can we like skate, like do old days, like stuff? Like, he's like, dude, fuck yes, please. I need to.
He comes out, he's got some fucking weird board with, they were like rollerblade wheels on the board or something. Like they were like these thin, softy, like, it was this crazy setup. I feel like even the deck was something weird.
So I had this Grant Taylor shape, spray painted with indies and these crazy roller skate wheels. I like the way they looked.
He's just kind of cruising around the park on it, right? And I was like, dude, we gotta get you a fucking real board. Come on, dude.
Like, you can't ride that thing. I was like, what? This is cool. He was like, whoa, I thought you were losing your mind at the time because you want to. And at the time, I kind of thought, oh, this is weird, whatever. But
so we got fully like nerded out on skating again. Sober, fucking watching skate videos, skating the park day and night, going out in the street, the whole thing. We started doing some trips, and we filmed that cinematographer project.
2011 to 2013, when I was living with Anthony, I feel like that's the best skating I've ever done. Fucking whipped my career back in shape, you know? Got to fucking cover a Thrasher again at like 33 years old, and it just felt strong, and I was drinking these protein shakes he showed me how to make, and like putting like fucking eggs in them and stuff, and I bulked up, and we would just skate, just 24/7 skateboarding.
Dill was like on a total skate mission. Like, he got ripped, skating super good.
I was very proud of it. And at the time, Anthony and I were very much team leaders, like getting everybody to kick ass, as we would say. You gotta kick ass. We gotta get out there, kick ass. And we just ate, drank, sleep, breathe skateboarding. It was sobriety for me, it was sobriety for him, and Dylan was just, right when he just turned it into that whole new realm of Dylan. And Omar was ripping, everybody was just skating so good, and Tyler and everybody. And so we were proud, but it had been 15 years that we were on Alien Workshop, since 1997.
That was a time also at the workshop when, you know, Dyrdek he was already famous, you know, but there was like robbing big boards and, you know, fucking his dog and his mini horse boards. And we knew that stuff paid a lot of the bills, probably, you know, but we didn't like it, you know, like it just didn't have the feel that we wanted, you know.
You know, all the team runners were very vocal about their feelings about what their teammates were doing or not doing, or how they were portrayed with maybe a brand or a sponsor. So there was a lot of that from all of them, because they really truly cared about Alien Workshop. They were always kind of wanting to know how we were going to shape the future of the brand and what that meant for them. And, you know, they're very concerned about all of that, yes.
It was being bought and sold a lot. There was Burton, then Workshop bought it back from Burton, and then they sold it to some other company, I believe. And Dyrdek bought it, and then Dyrdek was trying to wash his hands of it once he got in there. He's like, fuck.
It wasn't the company we were in love with anymore. It just wasn't the thing, and it's a shame.
Dill called me one day and was like, hey, what do you think about taking FA and turning it into a board company? And I was like, oh, this is fucking great, let's do it. It wasn't as quick as let's do it, and Dill was like, okay, cool, and like we did it. Like I think for Dill, there was a lot more back and forth. Dill wasn't even picking up my calls for a little while, because he was just like, I think he was scared. It's like, fuck, I gotta make all these boards. I gotta fucking, all these people, you know, it's like, we're gonna leave, and like, if it doesn't work, and what are people gonna think? And like, I didn't have these things because I wasn't making the boards. I can only imagine, you know, it's just like the pressure that he felt.
If I do this, I have to do so much fucking work above and beyond skateboarding. If I don't make the product does not exist. And that's what started fucking with me. I started doubting myself, doubting my abilities, drawing, collage, whatever. I started to doubt if I was capable of doing that. And then on the other end, Anthony and Bill calling me while I'm staying in this motel in Pacifica, being like, what the fuck are you doing?
I was like pushing them to like, dude, now's the time. I was like working on Sherry, working with all the kids from that video, and I was just like, dude, this is the time in your life that if you're gonna do it, like now's the time. Like you got a crew of fucking kids that they're gonna look fucking fire on this company together. And I was even like telling them about Dylan, because Dylan was like killing it.
Dill is so funny. He was like, wherever I go, you're gonna come with me. We're gonna spray paint our boards black for the next few months, and then I'll tell you what we're gonna do next or whatever.
When Anthony and Dill quit, it was truly heartbreaking. For them to quit to start their own brand it was a very mixed emotion for me. Super proud of them for what they've done. I wanted what was best for them ultimately, but it hurt us. It hurt me greatly to see them go. They were like my sons of sorts, but mixed for sure.
Yeah, I loved it from the beginning. Like instantly a fan. I thought the name was, I wasn't sure how well I was gonna do, but it took off.
Those were my favorite skaters growing up, like Anthony and Dill. Like those are the people I look up to when I was younger. And it just felt like FA was more than skateboarding. It's just like everything that every company is in.
The thing about Anthony and I and having the confidence to make FA, well, my thing's this: if you don't like me and you think I'm some kook or whatever, well, I know you're gonna fucking like this guy, because he's the blue collar, fucking get it done epitome of hardworking, easy on the ice skateboarder. I like thinking that there's someone that's a fan of skateboarding and saying, man, fuck Dill. Dill fucking sucks. But man, I love Ave.
I had already been writing for Vans when I met him, and he told me that, you know, he was gonna start like a new brand through FA called Hockey.
I think 2015 is when hockey started. It was just Donovan and I at first.
I'm very thankful for it. I think it's fucking insane. He fucking hooked us up.
But around that time when hockey was starting, I got a phone call from Ave, and it wasn't like a very good one. I was blowing it. I wasn't skating. They were trying to do this company, and pretty much he called me and like put me in check.
Me and John were just acting very wild. But Ave, like, when we were acting certain ways on trips, he would let us know how it was. And he's already been through certain things we were doing. So it was like, I respect him and I'm very thankful that he had our backs turned the whole time. Because now seeing it, I'm like, fucking embarrassing.
Donovan was really fucking up. And it was due to drinking and just being arrogant. And John had a problem with just getting drunk and waking up in Pacoima, and they're like, yeah, you like punched 3 dudes at a bar last night. Like that, and that was John's deal. And both, you meet Donovan and John, they're such sweet individuals. They're such nice humans. And Anthony, I think with his experience of his past and his experience in being in recovery was really great for them.
Without that, I wouldn't be here today 100% without like that kind of guidance and like someone helping me along the way, just like with alcoholism too. Like it's been in my family, and looking up to somebody that's like been there and done that and moved on and like lived a good life after that.
He's been a good role model. I know that sounds corny, but he's already lived it, and he's been such a big part of my life. When I like look at him, I have a little bit of hope that I'm gonna like be able to make it a little bit longer.
Yeah, a lot of people's favorites, you know, have gone through that, you know what I mean? The stuff that happens in skateboarding, you know. He was a very healthy, like, male example in my life. I remember just being at Anthony's first house and seeing, like, you know, that you could be a skateboarder and live in a nice home. He had a backyard, and that was the first time that I'd saw that with any, like, professional skateboarder, you know, like a modest, healthy life. I think it was important to see as a kid, you know.
Well, I mean, it's not like he sat me down and taught me life lessons, but it's just more of watching him from afar, the way he goes about things. I mean, just the way he puts his video parts together, the way he runs his company. Call him the sergeant, because he's just like the, you know, he's like our fucking general. Probably filmed a video part before I was born, so like, he's still out here doing this shit.
He's the oldest skater of the year. When Ave won, he was 36. Definitely the most experienced skater of the year at that age.
That was based on the Vans video, Propeller. I think that is some of the best skating I've ever put together. But I wasn't thinking about Skater of the Year. I was just concerned about doing the best that I could do.
They were out every single day, no matter what. Like, he's out with Greg, even if he's battered up and sore. He would take his shoes off and both of his socks would be thick with blood. Like, dude was like putting in work.
Without a doubt, that was the hardest I've ever worked on any project, you know. 100% sober, 100% I'm gonna skate every fucking day till this thing's done, and I'm gonna see what that looks like for the first time in my life.
Through that whole time making Propeller, Anthony was like super solid, really focused. It wasn't always easy, but he was like consistently kind of getting footage, and I think he'd found a process that was working. He kind of like pushed the whole squad to work harder.
Just watching the way, how much physical and mental effort he put into Propeller was really inspiring.
I also just enjoy spending time with him, you know. I mean, for me, that's like why I choose projects, is the people in the video. He's like a skater who I'd like to watch skate, but also he's like just a good dude, you know, to be around.
As far as his and I's relationship, we're bound to such a special time period in skateboarding, that late 90s, early 2000s, and going around the planet with him, and us spending so much time together and being dubbed one of the duos of skateboarding. Oh, I'm so proud of that. What a great way to be, for a world that's not gonna remember fucking anything, but to be alive in this moment and say, fuck yeah, like, me and him did it. We fucking did it. We did it on the workshop, and we did it on FA, and we were just still kicking ass. Like, that's so cool. Like, what more could you want from, you know, having a really close friend like that?
When we started FA, I remember being like, well, where are we going here? And I've always struggled with that, and I still do. Like, what's my future? Like, all I do is fucking a video part after video part. I have no skill set. Like, this is what I've dedicated my life to. Like, what the fuck am I gonna do? In my mind, I'm like, well, this is what we're gonna do.